there, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to talk about Big Wednesday, which is a John Milius film from the 1970s. Now this is a film, it's in my series Films Remember from Childhood, or Films from Childhood Memory. I actually saw this when I was a teenager, I think. And it was just on TV, and it was just a Sunday night or something where I just watched this the film it's on, I would watch it. And it just blew me away. It was one of those ones where it's one of those films you see early and it just impacts you completely. It just gets you completely. I adore this film. I've always adored this film. I've had it on VHS, I've had it on DVD, I've got it on Blu-ray. I'm praying they'll do a 4K, because this film needs a 4K because of the surf scenes. The surfing scenes are amazing in this film. They're the best that they'll ever be. They took forever to do in an audio studio because they set the film way over budget, and it caused one of the production executives to say there was an egotistical director going amok. Why does he sit out there waiting in these waves? Then you see this film and all these waves, how great the shots are, and it's like, that's why you had to wait for these waves. You had to wait to get these waves in. There's nothing. A CGI could never do this. Just some of the shots they get is astonishing. I mean, it really is. I don't even like the water. But this thing was beautiful. I have no desire to surf, but the film itself is about surfers. It's just that kind of... But it's really about aging. That's the thing. It's basically it's set in chapters. It's an episodic film. It's set over basically like a 15-year period where the characters start out as young men, like basically just beyond teenage years, and they age into adulthood. So it basically means at the start of the film you've got actors in their 20s playing teenagers, so that looks awkward. But soon they age up into their real ages, and then they get beyond their real ages. So it's just one of those things is you have to find some compromise with the film. So it starts off as so it's Jan Michael Vincent, William Cat, and Gary Busey are the three lead characters. But you've got supporting actors like Robert Englund in it. You know, there's lots of actors whose faces you'll recognise. And they're all basically surfers. And it starts out with Matt, who's played by Jan Michael Vincent, who's kind of the central character, even though all three characters are important. He's kind of the central one. He's the drunkard of the bunch. He's the one who's the wild card. He's the lunatic. Then there's Leroy, who's played by Gary Busey, who's called a masochist because he's very far out, but it's actually, with him it's almost like he's a showman. He's not really that wild, but he is. But you feel he's trying to compensate for something in his life. And as you go through the film, you see a lot of the kids are trying to compensate for stuff that's never going on in the family. But it's all done very subtly. And then the William Cat character is the one who's the more responsible one, the one who has more belief in family and has more belief in the community. He's the one that everyone dealing with the surfers, he's the one they will like to deal with because he's the same one. He can talk to everyone else and say, okay, that's enough. Calm down. He's the responsible one. So these three characters, and it starts at a house party in William Cat's character's house, which goes into a fight that trashes the place. And then there's a sequence where they go to Mexico and they end up in a bar fight. And the bar fight turns really violent really quick. So, but this is a Milius film where it's not about the violence, there's very little violence. If the violence happens, it's like, whoa. You know, there's barely a gun in the film. And the idea is these being like spoiled Californian kids actually seeing the real world and how lucky they are and how violent it can be. So the first section is really about them as teenagers, as irresponsible teenagers who don't know how to deal with the world. They don't know how lucky they are. They don't know how to actually place themselves with a future. So they're trying to enjoy themselves now. And by the end of this first section, Jan Michael Vincent's character Matt, he's got his girlfriend pregnant. So then we're going to the next section, and they're Vietnam's starting up really, and the point which where the old surf has been closed down, and now there's like lifeguards, and Leroy and William Cat characters are now lifeguards, and Matt's actually a drunk. He's like he's running from his responsibility, from his family, from his child who's now a few years old. He's just a drunk, and he causes an accident, and which gets him banned from the beach. And it's about how these friends come back together from that. That's the kind of part of that story in this section, is how they come together. And how William Cat character has to learn to forgive his pal. And Jeremy Corbyn's character has to learn to actually grow up a little bit. Because he's having problems, because people look up to him. And he doesn't know why they look up to him, because he's just a drunk and he doesn't really know what to do with his life. He doesn't know how to deal with responsibility. Then at that point you have to avoid a draft, because the draft is there now and they've all been drafted, so they have to try and go to the draft board and avoid it, and they treat it like a military operation. There's a really terrific sequence where you see them all trying to like find ways to get out of the draft. Like one of them's Jeremy Vincent's got a hot leg, one of them's Gary Busiek's insane, one of them actually lives on a Nazi, and when character actually goes in to the war, he does not find an excuse, he goes out into the war. And this is where the film really sort of changes a lot. I mean, there's been indications of it there with the problems that the Matt character has, but this is where the film kind of changes from being about youth to being about life. Because it's about the impact of this character going to Vietnam where he could die. And the final night where, instead of having a big party, they're just sitting in drinking beer and talking to each other. They've kind of grown beyond the raucous stage. And this character, character goes away, and you end up seeing the Matt character, because everyone else has left. Like, people have moved inland from the beach area, some have died. Like, one of the characters, a waxer who they were friends with from the early days, died in Vietnam as well. And Matt goes to he's starting to age a little bit, and he's running his own little company, sorting pools, cleaning pools. And then his wife's got a job as well, and they're just becoming responsible. They're getting a new house and things. And then he finds there's a film where he's on it because he's a sufferer. And they go to this place and they actually have the screening. He's only on it for like 2 seconds, and people are bored by him. And it's that sense of his time is slowly passing, and his fame was really 5 years ago. He's no longer there. He's just this guy who basically sorts pools now. And the film goes on when William Cat comes back from Vietnam, where he actually has... Well, it's not like he's a psycho or anything, but he is definitely traumatised. His girlfriend didn't wait for him. He becomes a ranger, but he's much more distant from people. He's no longer part of the community. He's on his own, really. There's a terrific reminiscent scene as they're going to Waxer's grave and they can't find it, and they're drunk and yapping to each other, and it's a really moving sequence. You start to see these guys, they don't really know what they're doing with their lives, but they're trying to mature. It's all about maturing, it's all about growing up, and it's not about having fun anymore. It's about how do you actually survive when all your friends are... Some of your friends have died, some of your friends have moved away, some of them have become drug dealers, and you don't really want anything to do with them anymore. And the only thing they've got to afford together is suffering. And the final section is basically about the big wave, the big Wednesday of the title, which is the big wave that's going to come in, and they have to... This is their moment to show what they're made of. This is their moment to show what the skills they've got as sufferers. Even though they're much older, this is a chance to show the work, to show themselves, really, to live up to their potential. And it's a great sequence. They actually walk into the beach as if they're samurai walking up the surfboards, and they go and face off against the big Wednesday. And it's an amazing sequence. It's worth whatever money spent trying to shoot this. It's worth it. It's so good. And there's points where the camera's into waves that's tilting over, and it's just wonderful. And there's it's a terrific film. It's just film. This is one of the reasons why it hit me so much when I first saw it. It was about growing up, and it was about even though I was watching it as a teenager, it was a bit stuff that, was coming down the line, this idea of maturing and people growing up and having families, which you don't actually see that much in like mainstream American films. They don't really cover it. It should be an epic subject, and it's not. It's really not. And this film actually took it, and then was just hammered, because people hated Milius at the time. So it got hammered, it bombed horribly, and then pretty quickly a cult came around it. It was just one of those films that was just born to be a cult. Because it was financed because they thought it was going to be another American Graffiti, because it was Milius was a pal of George Lucas, and this was like an American Graffiti rip-off thing, and it turns out it was so much more deeper, and it was, because American Graffiti is about one night, this is about 12, 15 years. It's about aging. It is about people getting let down by people they trusted. It is about people who are finding people who are reliable, like Jack Nicholson's character. One of the reasons why he survives so well is he's got a solid wife who loves him. He loves her. Because, at one point he defends her when someone says she called him a slut, and he punches the guy out. And it actually does tend to have even though these are immature guys, they're not sexist or anything. It's just like that's what they are, and then they grow up as they get older. Because the Gary Busey character is probably the one that's the most weirdest thing with women, but the Jamaica Vincent character and women character both have healthy relationships throughout it. It's not a big deal to them. And the Matt character literally is pretty much, his head's kept on by his wife. And it keeps him from, she understands his problems, and she can relate to his problems, but also she can motivate him to actually just be better. And that's kind of what he needs. So it's this thing about actually people actually being better than what they originally thought they would be. Because, they all mature. 2 out of the 3 go and get jobs and actually have a decent life. One of them is a father. But they've also this other side of them, of this great epic moment of riding that wave, and actually it's kind of like what's your childhood important thing. What's important in your childhood, what's important in your teenage years that you want to put to bed in some way. And this is like almost like it's not the suburban, it's the modern 60s American version of going into a war or going to do a great quest. It's just riding this wave. They don't need to go to war. They just have to have this thing they're passionate about and actually be excellent at it. Just do a great job of it. And that's what the film's about, is like being great at it, then pass it on to the next generation. Because at the end, they pass the board over to the next generation of surfers so they can be ready for their big wave later. And it's a mythic feeling, but it's also a myth based on what's very normal lives. Very much a story about normal lives and story about just people surviving. And I think that's been surprised a lot of people, because no one expected this from Milius. No one expected it to look so beautiful in the wave stuff, or be so kind to the characters, and be forgiving of the problems when they first started. Because at the beginning they are, lunatics. They are immature. But you need to see that to see how they actually progress from that. How they go from being, these tearaways to actually being young men, to being mature, but still have this passion they have to integrate into their lives. Jack Michael Vincent says at some point he only surfs when he really needs to now. He doesn't do it all the time, but it's there for him as like a stress relief. And that's kind of where it is in their lives, because they have to move on, but still their passion. So it's a beautiful film of passion about growing older. It's about it's about life, really. And it's a big surprise. It was the first kind of film I saw was about that kind of subject, and there's been very few that about it in America. You get a lot in other countries, but people mature and try to have a journey through their lives. But in America, it tends to be really reductive or be a biography of someone great, rather than just being normal lives or interesting. And if you write them well, they can be fascinating. You don't really get that very often. And this film really delivers it. It's just a beautiful film. And it's a cult film. You know, it's one of those films that has grown over time, and it was always a film always had it in different sort of thing. I've always had it. It's like one of those films you always upgrade as soon as it comes out, because it's like one of those important films for you. And you saw it young, and it just was always an important film for me. So I'm really happy to. I've actually managed to see it projected this time, which makes you see the waves being much greater. You know, it was nice to see a lot of details you missed before, and it's just to see how good it is projected, how well crafted it is. Like they put a lot of work into this film. It was made with love. The score's amazing. Basil Posadoris does it, and he did scores for Milius and Paul Verhoeven. He's just a terrific composer. The score for this one is one of his best. This is the finale. Music in the finale is stunning. You know, it's basically an American samurai score. It's so good. So that's Big Wednesday. I need to stop talking, otherwise I'll just jab on how great it is for another 20 minutes, and I think I've already made my points. So I'll go now. Just go see Big Wednesday. It's wonderful. It's amazing. Bye for now.